Greetings, everyone. This is Richard Solomon. The show is Taking Care of Business, and welcome to another week. Thanks for listening. This week we're going to listen to a really great interview with two very special people. One of them is a person I've known for a long time, and he was one of those people who's always been on my list of people to get on the show. His name is David Shepard. If you actually look him up on Wikipedia, there's an entire entry on him. So he's one of the people I actually know who's famous enough to make Wikipedia. With him on the phone call tonight is Nancy Fletcher, who is his wife and knows all about his great career and has a lot of really important, cool things to talk about in her own right. So today is sort of like one of those. What's that?
Nancy?
Oh, she's there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Are you there?
Oh, yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
You listening to all this?
Oh, yeah.
Here.
She's part of the whole fabric. So first of all, both of you guys, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking some of your very precious time to be with me on the radio and to share your great stories with my audience. Now, let's talk about improv. This show, for example, is basically an improv show because we never work off of a script. We don't really know who is going to really say what, and the show basically unfolds. In many ways, this is a lot like David's career. Let's talk about improv. You've been in improv your whole adult life, right?
No.
When did you get started with improv?
Well, I'll tell you the story.
I want to hear it.
Well, I was in a place called India, Bombay, teaching, and in other cities, traveling. And all of a sudden I said, the theater is all about 3-act plays, and people going from the bathroom to the dining room and living room and back again. So what do we do about it? So I said, let's find some people who like to tell stories, and the stories will dominate instead of the 3 acts. So I decided to go to Chicago because I thought that New York would be too effete. They would never understand what I'm talking about. So on the way to Chicago, I was hitchhiking, and I think I was going to Baltimore. In any case, I was
going to Cleveland.
Cleveland, whatever. I was hitchhiking, and this guy said, well, where are you going now? I said, I'm going to get off and go and do my bit. And he said, no, please don't do that. Stay with me because otherwise I will crash. So I couldn't let him crash, right?
No, not at all.
So I went to Chicago.
He said he needed the company so that he would stay awake.
Okay. So you were the coffee.
Driver.
You were the coffee.
Yeah, that story is true as far as I know.
All right. So you get to Chicago. What happens there?
Well, I met all these people who were hot to trot.
Well, who were the people and what were they doing?
They were just being students at the University of Massachusetts. What is it called? University of
Chicago?
Chicago, yeah.
Okay.
They were just busy being students, and they were selling grass, and they were having a good time.
What year was this? Roughly 50s?
53.
Okay.
Somewhere around there.
All right. Now, you were in the U.S. Army during World War II?
Yeah.
Okay. I remember you telling me a long time ago that you happened to have been in Europe, and that specifically you were at the Normandy beaches a little bit after the invasion. Is that correct?
I don't know Please say it again, and I'll tell you if
Yeah.
it's correct or not.
You were in the United States Army during World War II, weren't you?
Right.
What did you do what did you do during World War II?
Well, I was in the 16th Field Artillery Observation Battalion.
Okay. And where did the war take you? Where were you?
Well, I was in Normandy, in Brittany, I was in Holland, I was in Germany, and I was in Austria.
Wow.
So it took me all around.
All right. By any chance,
And I survived, and I came back, and my father, who was a colonel, put 3 inches of medals on my chest. So then I felt it was all worthwhile.
wow. And thank you for your service, because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be able to have the free speech rights of being on the radio that I have today. So thank you for that. So did your experience in the war shape your improv skills at all, or have anything to do with your pursuit of theater or the arts or creativity?
No, it happened later.
Okay. So
When I was in India, I told you that story.
right. How did you end up in India? How'd that happen? How'd you
I
go
wanted
from
to go there. I still want to go to China, and I plan to go there because I want to see what it's about. But India was very simple. You just go to England and then go down the canal, whatever it's called, and pretty soon you'll be in Bombay.
And what was it like in those days to be in India?
Well, it was sweaty, and in Bombay, I tried to get a job with the Protestants, and they said I was not devout enough. So I went to the Catholics at St. Xavier's School, and what they did is they turned out Parsis who were very clever and ended up in the United States. So that was a very strange mixture, but in the process of doing that, I studied with the Father Duhr, D-U-H-R, I think, and his students, and we studied Dante. Don't ask me why, but he was very good at teaching Dante. So that's what happened to me.
Okay. So now we fast forward. You leave India, you come to Chicago.
Right.
And what?
By accident.
Okay, because
In some ways.
because you were the coffee to someone that picked you up as a hitchhiker. How
Wanted to go to the
he wasn't
middle
going
of
to
the
Cleveland.
country where the real people were.
Okay. Now your destination was Cleveland, right?
At the beginning it was, but it ended up being Chicago.
Why did you pick Cleveland?
It was a big city.
Okay.
And it was close by.
And you knew that one day the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame would be there.
No, I didn't know anything about it.
No.
I was totally ignorant. I was just a young guy with a few dollar bills in his pocket looking to create a theater that would make more sense than the 3-act play.
All right. So now you're in Chicago. What was the first big thing that you were doing in Chicago to move these ideas forward? Were you involved? What were you?
I started thinking about, where could we create an entity that would carry my ideas forward. And the first thing I came up with, tonight at 8:30.
Was that your idea, tonight at 8:30?
I think so.
Okay. What was this?
It was just a cabaret on the north side.
Okay. And then
I remember it, and it was, and Paul Souls helped me to start it, and so did Charlie Jacobs.
And how did this work out? Was it successful? Did it lead to other things?
Well, we did serious plays, European plays, and it didn't catch on. So it died.
Okay.
So this is my memory. Understand? I'm not saying this is the truth. This is my memory. And as I remember it, it kept going south.
Okay.
So next location we moved into, I got a wealthy businessman to help me to sign a lease on, I think it's called Devon and Broadway.
And what was that?
In Chicago.
But what was it? What was it about?
Was that Playwrights Theater Club, David?
Yeah, I guess so. Playwrights Theater Club, right.
But Paul wanted to do Brecht and different edgy author playwrights, and David was willing to put up the money for it for a couple of years, as long as the organizers and the participants would then climb on board his idea after that.
Okay. What was that idea?
See, I didn't remember that, but you do.
Well, it's a group effort.
You told me that if you were willing to back Paul's ideas, then it was a time when you asked him if he would do yours.
Okay.
So then what happened?
Sounds logical.
All right. So what happened then? Or what happened next?
Let's fast forward to Compass.
Okay.
That was the next thing. Yeah.
Perfect. What is Compass? Does it stand for anything, and what did it do?
Why did you pick the name Compass, David?
Well, I was interested in direction.
Ah, there you go.
Which way is the world going? Which way is the United Nations going? Which way is America going? These were, I felt, more important than asking what the relationship of Alice and Stephen was. So I was asking my friends who were very literate to write scenarios, and people like Elaine May were turning out so many scenarios you couldn't see her arm because her arm was completely covered with scenarios. And she found Mike Nichols, who was in the cast at that time, to be very interesting, and together they went off and formed a group, which, as you know, Nichols and May, became a very successful comedy group. So that all came out of Compass. And it came out slowly, and other people came out too.
When did you figure out that Viola Spolin would figure into the thing with the improv? When did she come to train the cast?
She was somehow or other in Chicago, and I remember inviting her to the Harvard Club, and there was Viola Spolin walking around the Harvard Club. And she seemed to be very comfortable there. And then she had a sister who was also brilliant. I can't remember her name, but at any rate, she's in the books. And so it went. We just put together some chairs. Paul was very good at moving chairs around.
Viola was Paul's mother.
Ah, okay.
Right.
All right, let's do this. We've actually went through our first segment here. So we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. My guests are David Shepard, look him up in Wikipedia, and Nancy Fletcher. We'll be right back after this. Please keep it locked.
What I really
Welcome back. This is Richard Solomon. You're listening to Taking Care of Business, TCBRadio.com. You can also find us at YouTube at youtube.com/user/TCBRadioWCWP. If you'd like to send us an email, TCBRadioWCWP@yahoo.com. Our phone number is 516-299-2683 during business hours during the day. Give us a call. We love to hear from you. We love comments. We love suggestions about guests. And, of course, we're always looking for great guests like David Shepard and Nancy Fletcher, who are with us today.
Hello, I'm David Shepard.
That's right. Oh, and you're the one and only David Shepard. You're the only one that matters to me. Okay, so you were involved in Compass.
Thank you for bringing me on. It's a long time since I worked with you, and it's a delight.
Oh, so I have to share with all the people out there, we actually knew each other from a long time ago, and we were on the phone a lot, but then one day we got to meet. We probably met in Manhattan, and I remember you looked at me and you said, I thought you were tall and blonde. Well, I'm sorry I'm not tall and blonde, but, you know, the friendship has endured, and we've done a lot of cool things together, and here we are today after all these years. So, and that was back probably in the 1980s. Okay. No, it was probably back in the 1990s, the early 1990s. So, and I was involved in group creativity in New York and was in Shanty Queen, but a movie that was an improv movie. I was in a movie that we all created together called Shanty Queen.
Shanty Queen.
Yeah, I think it won some kind of award in like an underground film festival or something like that. But we'll talk about that. So let's go back in time. You were doing Compass. You were in Chicago. And then I know that there was something called Second City. You were involved in that also?
Second City began about 7 years after we started. The Second City is now an international hit.
Okay, but you were there at the beginning. Let's talk about the beginning when you were there. What was it then?
Well, it was a bunch of people who went to the University of Chicago, and they were growing pot and backlocks, and they were struggling with their families to have their own life, have their own source of marijuana and hashish, and so it went all swirling around the university. You can find the name of the guy who was running the university. I can't remember it myself, but he was very suave.
So it wasn't Second City the outgrowth of Compass?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, Compass.
Second City came after Compass.
Yeah, they wanted to use the whole premise, but do it more for laughs.
Yeah.
Get more based on comedy. David's Compass was not. They weren't going for the laughs. He was going for reality.
We're going for stories, and we got a very brilliant man to write the stories.
But when it when it went into Second City, they asked you if they could use your name, Compass.
Yeah.
And you said no, because you were bringing it to other cities.
Right. We took it eventually to St. Louis, the West Coast, and two places in Canada, and right now it's in dozens of Canadian high schools.
Wow. Now, how did it get the name Second City?
Well, Bernie Sahlins, who was then alive, wanted to create something that was different from New York. And the way to do that was to call it not First City, but Second City.
Wasn't Chicago known as the Second City?
Maybe.
Okay. Now,
and that would make California the third city, I think.
Now, you were born in New York, right?
I was born in New York.
How'd you feel about living in Chicago?
I felt good. I felt New York was extinct. I didn't see anything happening in New York. Whereas in Chicago, people were very much alive and very interested in climbing on my ideas and making them happen.
So Second City is now up and running, and it's...
No, it didn't get up and running for 7 years.
Right, but once it was up and running, it was comedy-based.
Yes.
Did it launch the careers of anybody into comedy?
Oh, a whole lot of people.
But that's why I asked the question. Who?
I mean, I think the David's Compass launched the careers of Alan Alda, Alan Arkin, Shelley Berman. His Playwrights Theater Club is where Ed Asner got his start. Who else, David?
Jerry Stiller?
Yep, Stiller and Mira.
Stiller and Mira, yeah, they came out of that.
And then when it became Second City, then just all of the iconic comedians that John Candy and Bellucci and
yeah, but then it was very far from my control.
yeah, it wasn't David. I think David directed or was part involved early on in Second City, but then he had a family in New York and he didn't participate and he didn't invest in it, although he was asked to.
So you were pulled back to New York at some point?
Yeah, well, that's where my family was.
Okay, so what year did you go back to New York?
I don't know.
Around 60.
Okay. What was happening in New York that you were a part of, other than being a part of your family?
I was following around Paul Sills. Wherever he went, he'd invite me to participate, and it made me feel good, and it made him feel good.
Okay.
And also Charlie Jacobs, his roommate, was very much involved.
But Paul wasn't in New York, David, was he?
At some point he was, yeah.
I didn't know that. Oh.
See, that's why we ask all the questions, because you never... So was any improv being done either at Compass or in Second City? At this time?
Well, we used improvisation because we didn't have enough people to write the scripts, so we were forced to go into improvisation.
And so, in many ways, how did that work out? Was that a blessing in disguise?
Because what happened was somebody got an idea and then they'd kick it around. There was a lot of drinking of coffee. You had to be replenished with silver so you could buy coffee and carry it around.
Oh,
Put it down and stand up and write something down in your sleeve or on a pad of paper or whatever. It got written down, and then sometimes it was taken and turned into a script. It actually happened. You ended up creating scripts not through writing them down, but through improvisation. It was the best adequate way of going about it. You understand?
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember being a participant in your workshops, and I remember you would give us exercises. For example, I remember you would say, the scene is two people packing for a trip, but you could not talk about the trip. You had to talk about something else.
Okay.
And I remember you would challenge us to be creative and to think differently. And in some of the ways, that was hard to do because, for example, when we were packing for the trip, an imaginary trip, and you can't talk about the trip, and you're with someone you don't even know because that's the person you were assigned to do the sketch with, you had to improvise, and you had to play off the other person, and you had to be very creative. And I thought those exercises were actually very, very healthy and important in creating a creative spark in all of us.
Well, thank you.
And probably that helped train me a lot for both being a lawyer, because there's a lot of improv in being in a courtroom, and there's certainly a lot of improv being on the radio and talking to a lot of different people about a lot of different kinds of topics. And
that's great.
And since we don't have a crack research staff or a script, we get this, which is improv radio.
We have what? Improv what?
That's why this is basically improv radio. So in many ways, this radio show is an extension of Compass and group creativity. Since I'm one of your students, I'm now bringing improv to the radio. So maybe I'm another one of your famous students, still continuing the tradition in another format at another time.
Okay.
Actually, they did a show where they had, I don't remember the station in New York, but they had 3 or 4 or 5 characters, and it was a call-in show, and a person would call in and suggest an idea for a scene, and then they would actually improvise it right on the spot.
On the radio?
On the radio.
Ah.
What's that called, David?
I can't remember.
But was that was like radio theater in a way?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it worked.
It worked really well.
So wait, Nancy, tell me this again. How would this work? So, like, let's say, for example,
somebody would call in and say, "I want a scene about the delivery of a pizza."
Right.
And the caller would, or David would say, "Okay, you play the delivery boy," and then they'd have a woman and David and Howard Jerome and a couple of other people, and they would just create this scene right there, just off the cuff, with the caller.
Wow. Are there any recordings of any of this stuff lying around?
Yes, there is.
Ah.
It's in the documentary, David Shepard, A Lifetime of Improv.
So let's talk about that for a few minutes. I know that you're famous enough, and it's okay. I know that you're very, very humble. But let's talk. You have a lifetime career of improv and whatever. And I noticed that there's on YouTube, which is on the internet, your documentary appears. How did that start? And it's about an hour and a half long. And there's all kinds of people in it. Tell us a little bit about that.
No, Nancy, you say about it. I don't know.
The person who picked up one of his improvisational formats called Improv Olympics and developed and spread it in Canada was WWII. And
that's a cool name.
Yeah, he was a lawyer also. And he was really impacted by improv. And he supported it, and they got government support, and it became the Canadian Improv Games because the Olympics didn't like the name, and Improv Olympics.
Ah.
And so it's been played now there for 30 or 35 years, and there's 300 high schools across Canada that participate, and they all do playoffs in Ottawa once a year. And kids are just, their lives are turned around by the participation in this whole structure. And that is why so many Canadian actors are so many actors are coming out of Canada. It's because of this training, this experience. Anyway, Willie felt that it would be a good idea to somehow chronicle David's improvisational formats, because Compass was just one of the very first ones. David has gone on to devise and invent all sorts of formats that have to do with improv and are they're extant, but he gets bored and goes on to other ones. And you experienced yourself the one where you use improv to make a movie.
Yes,
and
we made Shanty Queen, which was a
right,
movie. Yes,
right. So the idea was going to be a blog at the beginning, and Michael Golding, who was one of the callers into the radio show about the pizza scene, and got involved with David when he was 14 through that show, and has worked with him ever since. And Mike Fly, who is the videographer, and they came to our house in Belchertown, Massachusetts in 2009 and interviewed David. And they used that as the through line, and then they went other places and interviewed other people who were involved with David's improv schemes. And so it outlines what they thought were all of his formats, but I know of several that weren't even covered. So we have boxes and boxes of stuff here. I don't know if we'll ever get to the bottom of it, but David's continuing to invent, and the latest one was called Life Play, which is using improv for playing games on the phone between people that are in different cities or different countries.
And it works.
Oh, it does. Let me share with the people out there who are listening. When I was in the movie, we would have meetings in your house. You were in the village near NYU. I forgot. We met once a week, and we improvised the script. And it wasn't really so much a script, so much it was an outline. And then we actually went out there and shot the movie. And there was different. I forgot. I know that the scene that I was in was filmed on the steps of the Supreme Court at 60 Center Street, which is where they filmed Law and Order. And
say that again. The Supreme Court where?
In New York County, Manhattan, where they filmed Law and Order. That we filmed on the steps of the courthouse.
Wow.
And that was way before Law and Order and all the other people used the courthouse as their backdrop. And I remember, I think I used my high school graduation or whatever cap and gown, the gown part, for the judge's robe, because I think I was the judge. And I know that my brother wore a loud suit, and he was the evil landlord's lawyer. And and apparently it was like they went to housing court, and the woman was evicted, and I was the judge who gave the order evicting her. And my brother was the landlord's sinister lawyer. It was really, really well done, and it was very, very effective, and it was really very visionary for its time. But I remember the whole creation process where we would meet every week. We would get all the ideas down. We'd shape the movie. Everybody would participate. We had, 15-ish, 20 people in the group. And then everybody had their part. And then I remember one day we had the debut. We all sat down and watched it. It was really cool. We all clapped. And then I know that it was submitted to some film festival, and it was great. And I got at the end of it, I got a VHS.
I missed that last sentence.
Oh, well, I remember that we submitted it to a film festival, and I remember at some point we actually got some kind of award.
Oh, really?
Yeah. All right.
What is it called?
Shanty Queen. So speaking of the Shanty Queen, we have to take a break because this is Richard Solomon on Taking Care of Business. We'll be right back. Richard Solomon, taking care of business, continuing in our third and final segment of this week's episode with David Shepard and Nancy Fletcher. So let's turn to Nancy for a second. How'd you meet David?
A mutual friend of ours introduced us. David was coming up to Northampton to visit him and said to himself this was a great place to test out his movie experience, which is what the format that you experienced. And he wanted to develop it further, and he felt that the people that were here were ripe for such a thing. And Jack Tannenbaum was a mutual friend and said, "Oh, well, you've got to see or contact Nancy Fletcher." And the reason he suggested me was because I had a video production company, and I had been in a comedy improv group for a year, and
She had a car.
And I
and she had a car.
a public relations company which did events, started out doing events. So I had a lot of the pieces that would help to develop the movie experience.
And then what happened after all of that?
So David came up on the bus, got off the bus, and walked into my life and changed it forever. This was my 52nd birthday, and I had invited, at David's suggestion, my friends to participate in this experiment, and they were all kind of really up for something like this. And I think there were about 30 people here. And the night before, the night that David came, 6 of us got together and came up with a rough idea of what we were going to do. Because David saw I live in a very rustic home, and he thought it would be a good location for a retreat and for executives and their spouses. So that was kind of a rough outline of what we were going to do. I don't remember it that well, exactly how it was shaped at that first time. But the next day, 30 people came, and we created a scene after scene, and it was thrilling. I just loved being part of this. And we sat down that evening and had a party and watched the thing, because it was edited in camera, and it was intact. I mean, it held together. And the last scene was in the pool, and we were all circling in the pool, the 4-foot deep pool, indoor pool, and with flowers in our hair, and that was supposed to be the final exercise for this workshop for executives and their spouses. And
I remember a young boy, I think it was, or a girl, being involved in this very complex scenario. So we were taking in all kinds of people we had never taken in before.
Yeah, it was all ages. I remember, David, you had coached a scene where somebody was barefoot on the deck in the snow. It was a boy and a girl, teenagers,
right?
Or something. But it was thrilling to me. And a couple of, maybe a week after that, I had this epiphany and realized that I had always been interested in girls' self-esteem. I was public relations director at Mount Holyoke, my alma mater, and when I was running my video production company, I was trying to figure out how I could use video and for raising girls' self-esteem. And I realized the format that I had been exposed to with David was perfect. I thought it might be perfect for it. because you wouldn't even have to talk about self-esteem. You just do this, and people feel good about themselves. And so I did a pilot with Girls Inc. in Holyoke, and it was magic. It really was way more potent than I even realized. And so I started a nonprofit called Act Now, and raised money and gathered all my friends across the country and beyond, and to sit on what I called an advisory board. And we did about 45 movies before I retired, and the Act Now is now part of Cutchins, Child and Family Services in Northampton, Massachusetts.
Wow. So I have to ask the obvious question. You, Nancy, are from the world of improv, and David is from the world of improv. Your lives together, is it all just improv? What's it like?
We do. We riff all the time. When we have parties to celebrate David's birthday or mine or whatever, we always set up a stage and do improv with our friends. And when we're just doing normal things like getting ready for bed, or we'll launch into I'll launch into a character, or it's
never
a
boring.
Trip, I'll tell you, it is a trip.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the things I want to get to before the end of the show. I know that David, you wrote a book called.
I didn't understand what you said.
Oh, she just said that your life is a big improv. Your lives together.
What you said, you wanted to.
I want to get into some topics before our show time runs out. So one thing I want to talk about, for example, is you wrote a book called "The Movie in Your Head." You want to talk about that? You want to talk about that for just a little bit? I think I have a copy of that somewhere.
Oh, you do?
Oh, I believe I was one of the first people to get a copy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, there were two books written at that time, one by me and one by my friend Michael. What's his name?
Golding.
Not Golding.
DePaulo?
DePaulo. Yeah.
He wrote a book?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I wrote a book and he wrote a book, and his was, I think, more voluminous than mine. But we knew each other, and we took ideas from each other, and we walked up and down on the beach, and it was fine. And
are you talking about the documentary he did on you?
Yeah.
DePaulo? Oh, there's an amazing documentary on David that Michael DePaulo did. He shot it just before I met him. Mostly on the beach, with the waves coming in and walking on the beach and talking with David. It is the most visceral and improvised documentary that there is on David. It's really terrific.
Is that on YouTube or anywhere we could find it?
It hasn't been released yet. We have a copy. It's really quite amazing, quite extraordinary.
I think
can we make another copy and send it?
I would love a copy.
Sure.
I have the David Shepard book. I've been in the David Shepard movie, so I need to have a copy of the David Shepard documentary as part of my library. Because
Forgotten Prophet.
Well, you're not forgotten because you're on the radio, and I certainly always will know and remember all the great things that you have accomplished. So let's go back. You made the book called "The Movie in Your Head."
Yeah, the book was many years in preparation, but David met a person who was just starting out a business helping authors publish, and she was very instrumental in getting the ideas codified and solidified, because David was always tweaking and changing. And we should really give Claudia Gear credit for getting them wrapping them on the page.
Did you get that Claudia Gear?
Okay. We'll give her a shout out.
So it got printed. Yep.
I have a copy, and I remember reading it cover to cover when I got it. And it's somewhere in my library. We moved a couple of times, but I know I have it somewhere. Because books like that, you just always hold on to.
Yeah.
Especially when you know the author. So what current projects are you working on now?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, we just came back from a trip, and we're going on another one to a place called Florida.
Well,
but what about the Jonah complex, David?
What about it? You talk about it. You know about it.
Well, this is... I don't have intimate knowledge of it. I've read... It is. I thought it was a play, but it really is much more than a play. It's like an experience for the cast, and it's about Jonah, the story of Jonah, and
Jonah and the whale from the Bible?
Yep.
Okay.
And I guess there is a... David, is there a term called the Jonah complex?
No, I made it up.
Oh, you made it up. Okay. So I don't remember the psychological premise behind it, but it's fascinating, and it exists in script form. I guess it was you did it about
Yes.
20 years ago.
Yes, there's a script lying around someplace.
Yeah, we have the script, but again, it's more general.
So
it's more of an outline.
So if archaeologists were to invade your home right now, would they find scripts and manuscripts and movies and tapes and DVDs?
And you don't even know.
and well, maybe is there any effort being undertaken to categorize all this stuff and maybe put it in a museum or somewhere?
Well, part of it's in the archives at the University of Chicago. David they bought, I guess, a bunch. And then Michael Golding tried to raise money to come out and do the rest of it. And he's in that process now of trying to get that, because he is the one who is the repository of, his mind is really sharp, and he was there since he was 14, so he knows, and he was very involved with the creation of the Canadian Improv Games also. So he just knows so much. He lived in New York City, so he knew all about the development of group creativity and that radio show and many other things.
Do you still keep in touch with some of the people who are either your students like myself or other people out there, or people who are the actors or the movie makers or the...
No, the main person you should know is Michael Golding, because he knows more about me than I know about myself.
But Richard, it is true. He has people come out of the woodwork. I was in Maine, and on an island, Monhegan Island, and somebody was visiting a friend, and turned out that he knew or had known David. Oh, David, yes, he was so instrumental in my life, and he helped me launch. That happens all the time. All these key people that people all over. We have quite a list of people that we put together for David's 90th, and so
I'm working on my 100th.
Well, you know what, you're on a great path because you've accomplished so much, and I'm looking forward to the next 100 years to see what you'll come up with, because you've certainly been a pioneer and an innovator, and in this day and age,
I didn't get that. Say that again.
You're a pioneer and an innovator, And to be honest, in this day and age, we really need more creativity out there. It seems that there's a lot less creativity than there used to be. So we definitely need you to keep doing what you're doing.
To tap it, because it's percolating. It's just there under the surface.
Well, Richie, you're helping me a lot, so just keep on helping me.
All right. Well, do you have a website or anything that you want people to go take a look at? Do you have a website of any of your stuff or your groups?
It does.
Tell me, because we only have 2 minutes left.
I think it's groupcreativityproject.com. Is that right, David?
Groupcreativity@charter.net.
No, that's your email.
Okay. Well, people want to email you. We can send them an email. But
sure.
I guess if they Google or internet search Group Creativity, we'll see some of your stuff out there.
Group Creativity Project, I think, is the thing.
All right. Well, I can't thank you enough. I personally want to take a minute to thank you for all that you've contributed to my life. And in many ways, part of this radio show was inspired way back when I actually learned how to do improv with you. So in many ways, this experience is an extension of what we did all those years ago. So I want to dedicate this show to you and all the improv and creativity that we shared together all those years and still do to this day.
That was great.
So with that, we will. I want to thank you both for taking the time from your busy days. The next trip is to Florida. You got any exotic destinations you want to talk about in the next 1 minute that you're headed to? Going back to India or any other?
The exotic one was Vieques. We were in Puerto Rico. We just were there in January. That was fun. And we did improv down there. We had a whole night. We got all our friends together to do that.
Sounds like a lot of fun. All right. We're out of time, but I'll tell you, we will cherish the show. This will be up on various formats. And for those who are listening, if you didn't catch us, you can always catch us up on YouTube. We're rebroadcasted. And if you want to get in touch with us, 516-299-2683. Thank you for listening.
Did you get that number, Nancy?
Yes.
516-299-2683. Give us a call. Thank you for listening. We'll see everyone next week. Have a safe and happy week. And live for the moment and try to be as improv as you can in a world that's kind of very mundane. Thanks for listening.